A question that gets asked a lot in my live streams is whether or not it is worth it to return to Monster Hunter Wilds. Usually the people asking this question will point out that they've played through the base game and then they got to the end game and they felt like the challenge wasn't really there, or maybe the end game loop was not satisfying enough for them. Sometimes performance also gets pointed out, which naturally is one of the reasons why we're still in mixed reviews when it comes to Steam, at least one of the main reasons why the game sits on mixed reviews on Steam, and that performance kind of prevented them from really enjoying the game properly. Well, I figured that today I'd just go over a video and tell you everything that has been added onto the game. And when it comes to the performance side of things, unfortunately, things are still in the classification of your mileage will vary depending on the hardware that you have available to you. So I recently made a video on performance. You guys might want to check that out if that is something that you are interested in knowing more about. The only hardware that I have available to me, unfortunately, is quite limited. So I tested it on my 7900 XTX, then I tested it on my B580, which is the rough equivalent to like a 4060. It's slightly better because it has more VRAM, but suffice it to say there's been a lot of patches that have improved performance, but unfortunately there's also been some dubious drivers that also clash with those patches. So just to give you guys an idea, the recent drivers from AMD have actually been problematic, not just in Monster Hunter Wilds, but also in another game that I tend to play, which is Path of Exile 2, and therefore I'm still in the version 25.10.1, whereas the most up-to-date version of the AMD drivers is actually 25.12.1. I've also heard recently, as recent as my last Monster Hunter Wilds livestream, that NVIDIA drivers have also been updated because I don't know if it's DLSS 4.5 or something, but I don't know. Something's been added to the NVIDIA drivers, and that has also been causing issues. So basically, updating our drivers is something that can also clash with the current performance situation with Monster Hunter Wilds, which really just sucks. But suffice it to say, if you can get through the performance issues, if you happen to be on PC, because I've been hearing that consoles have actually been running pretty better, especially since the Title Update 4 update. But if you're able to run the game, let's talk about all of the things that were actually added from Title Update 1 onwards. So one of the first things that we're going to have to bring up is Zoshia. So you did fight Zoshia in low rank, but that was the only time that we ever got to fight Zoshia. With Title Update 1, they've introduced Zoshia as a permanent hunt that constantly spawns in the Wyverian Ruins, and there's also a tempered version of that hunt, which is slightly more challenging, and it is also a very enjoyable fight. I would definitely recommend, if you already honed the game, at the very least, fighting Zoshia is something that is really, really cool to come back and do and experience that fight in its entire glory, as opposed to just, fighting the low-rank version of Zoshia. Now, on top of that, during Title Update 1, we also got Mizutsune added, which has, for those of you that actually played Generations or Generations Ultimate, it also has a couple of touch-ups of Soul Seer mixed up into when he gets enraged and stuff like that, which is really cool. Mizutsune fight pretty fun, but Mizutsune is still one of those monsters that, like, you clap him in the head enough times, he just kind of falls over. It's like, help, I've fallen and I can't get up. But it is a pretty interesting fight, especially if you're still progressing with your gear and you're not like giga kitted out by now. If you're still progressing with your gear, Mizutsune can still be fairly challenging. Now, a little bit further ahead with Title Update 1, we actually had what was, in my opinion, one of the biggest corrections when it comes to the difficulty situation of Monster Hunter Wilds. I was one of the people that talked about how I didn't feel like the game was challenging enough. I know that there's been a lot of pushback from some people in the community about that. I still stick to my guns. It is what it is. I still like the game. I enjoy the game, but in its release state, I did feel like the challenge just wasn't really there. But with Title Update 1, what I'm calling Title Update 1.5, which was the second update to Title Update 1, they've added the Akuma collaboration and all of this other stuff. I'm not going to be talking about specific events. I'm mostly going to be talking about permanent editions of monsters, right? But one of the things that they've done with that specific patch is they've also added 8-star monsters. Now, those were only added, I think, to Apexes. So like, your Ray Dao, your Uthduna, Jendahad, and I'm always missing one, New Udra. Those were the ones that got 8-star versions. Now, 8-star also scales in difficulty from like 3 to 5 usually, because I very rarely see 2-star monsters. But basically 8-star 5 strength monsters, in my opinion, was like they fixed the difficulty issues that I had with this game. Because these are the monsters that I want to hunt, this is the level of challenge that I want, and this is really, really good. But they didn't just do that. See, then with Title Update 2, we had another 2 new monsters added, well, returning monsters, in the form of Lagiacrus and Seregios, also known as Steve. So Lagiacrus has been a phenomenal fight, particularly if, you're someone who's played 3 Ultimate, or if, like me, you're somebody who started with Monster Hunter Tri. Just getting to hunt Lagiacrus again just felt really, really good. There's a water segment that is a little bit divisive in the community. Some people like it, some people don't like it. I think the water segment is fine. I don't really have an issue with it. I really, really enjoy the Lagiacrus fight. I've recently done like a tier list of all the monsters. Lagiacrus is an S tier because I just really, really enjoy that fight. Super fun, especially if you're fighting him in like 8-5, or as another more enhanced version that we'll talk about a little bit further ahead. Seregios fight is also a lot of fun. It's going to be a little bit more challenging if your weapon does not have a shield. A lot of people have struggled with Seregios, but personally, I thought it was really, really cool. So, 3 returning monsters added in the form of Mizutsune, Lagiacrus, and Seregios, and also Zoshia added as a permanent monster that spawns in the Wyverian Ruins, also with a tempered version. Now, if you're looking for even harder challenges, since the release of the game, they've also added 4 arc-tempered variants of existing monsters. Naturally, these are going to be your apex predators in the form of Raydao, Uthduna, New Udra, Jindahad. Also, I should mention that for 8 stars, there were a couple more monsters that also got the 8-star treatment in the form of Gormagala and Arkveld. Forget if there's more. There's also been event quests of monsters that got like the 9-star treatment, which we'll talk about a little bit further ahead. But for now, just be aware there's also arc-tempered versions of the 4 apexes, and there's another arc-tempered coming in February in the form of Arkveld. So Raydao gets arc-tempered, Uthduna gets arc-tempered, New Udra gets arc-tempered, and Jindahad gets arc-tempered. Now, out of those fights, there's also been a challenge mode that has been added to each of the fights, but those are like timed. So right now we're going through the arc-tempered Jindahad, and you have to defeat him within 18 minutes, which is actually fairly easy. The very first one was actually arc-tempered Raydao. That one was like 13 minutes, but you can't really do those timed events anymore, but you can still fight arc-tempered Raydao. Each of these monsters also brings with it a gamma version of their armor, which is much more beefed up than the regular versions that you collect during the base game. As a matter of fact, that's like kind of the meta armor right now. You want to use at least 3 pieces of armor from these monsters because they all share the same group bonus called, is it group bonus or set bonus? Group bonus. They all share the same group bonus, which is called Lord Soul, which is very, very powerful. But yeah, so there's 4 arc-tempered monsters to fight, and in February there's going to be a 5th one that has already been confirmed. Now, on top of that, they've also added a new difficulty mode, which I've kind of already alluded to, which is the 9-star monsters. Now, 9-star monsters is something that I really didn't expect. When we got the 8-star monsters, I was like, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. This feels fantastic. This is perfect for a base game. And then they're like, we're going to make it even harder, and they did 9 stars. Now, 9-star monsters, you're talking about, once again, all of the apexes. So your Raydao, Uthduna, New Udra, Jindahad. On top of it, Gormagala as well, and Arkveld. All those get the 9-star treatment, which those fights are really challenging. Like, you're talking, some of these fights almost feel like they're master rank level already, even though we're only in a high rank so far. So the challenge has been fixed, so to speak, but only in the post game. So the base game difficulty is still the way that it was, but now we have these 9-star monsters with 5 strength that are actually super challenging, super hard to beat, that I personally really enjoy. But that wasn't enough. They decided to up the ante one more time. So we also had a collaboration with Final Fantasy XIV, and the monster that we got from Final Fantasy XIV is Omega. Omega is a robot, so not everybody likes the fact that there's like this robotic creature coming in and you're hunting a robotic creature. Personally, I really enjoy that fight. That is one of my favorite fights. Also ranked that S tier. It is also currently, I believe that most people in the community would agree with me, it is also currently the hardest fight in the game. It is a fight that is somewhat designed for a group, but it can be tackled with support hunters. So basically you don't really need other human players to clear this fight, but it is going to be very challenging to do solo. I've done it solo. It took me like half an hour to beat the boss in solo, but you know, your mileage will vary with that. But better players than me have done it significantly faster. So it is just one of those things where it is soloable, but I find it to be easier and also more fun to have other players in there, because then you can all kind of like make fun of each other as you make mistakes and stuff like that. But it is a very challenging, a very demanding fight, to the point where like even if I was to take 3 other players that know everything there is to know about the fight, there is still a chance for failure, especially when we reach the very last phase of that fight, because it is very challenging. So I really like Savage Omega, but that one really is, I would say that's a master rank level challenge. A lot of people will say it's harder than Fatalis. I don't know if you can directly compare because there's so many mechanical differences and stuff like that, but you know, it is what it is. Savage Omega, absolutely fantastic. For all those of you that thought there isn't really anything that's challenging enough for me in Monster Hunter Wilds, Savage Omega will put that statement to the test straight up. There's also a normal version of Omega, which is significantly easier, but you know. Savage Omega also comes with its own exclusive armor that, I don't know if for some sets that's meta nowadays or not, but it's a pretty good armor set and it's got some pretty good pieces. It also comes with the Dark Knight armor set that you can get for doing regular Omega, I think, which gives you like some special stuff. If you're a fan of like Final Fantasy XIV Dark Knights, you get to kind of like become kind of like a Dark Knight. There's also an added item that lets you like cast spells from Final Fantasy XIV, but it's mostly for use with Omega, but you can still use it in other monsters, kind of like the Igni sign that you had in Monster Hunter World. It's not very effective against the monsters, but against the monster that it's designed for, it's pretty good. Now, on top of it, as you can imagine, there's also lots of new events, lots of quality of life stuff. It would take me like hours to go through everything that's been added. Pretty much all of the weapons have also been buffed across the board to be a little bit more fluid. And then, when it comes to new endgame systems, I'm going to point out 3 main things that have been added. So there's a talisman grind. There's random talismans in the game now. And usually you get these by doing 9-star hunts. The harder the hunts, the more talismans you're going to get. And those talismans can be very, very powerful. You're talking about, for instance, I have a talisman that has level 3 attack. So attack 3 and burst 1. And you can get that talisman and also get an additional weapon slot to put in another weapon skill, which means these talismans are very, very powerful, but it's also very much RNG. It is what it is. Then there is the Transcendence system, which in my opinion is one of the best systems that they've added to the game. Transcendence allows you to upgrade armors beyond a certain point. And what happens is once you transcend an armor, if it's an armor of rarity 5 or 6, then that armor also gets additional slots, which is really, really good, because basically you can bring up armors that are old and maybe they're not very viable. You can bring those up to the endgame level because they get better armor slots whenever you upgrade them fully, which is cool. For armors of 7 and 8 rarity, those just get additional defense. You know, it is what it is. But basically, it really increases the viability of weaker armors to be used in the endgame. So in my opinion, Transcendence is one of the coolest systems they've added into the game. And then there's the Gogma Ardian weapons, which were introduced with another monster, which is Gogmazios. Now, Gogmazios is not as hard as Savage Omega. It is challenging. It is fun. It is one of those big, epic cinematic fights that you get. Super fun. Absolute blast. Love fighting Gogmazios. But the Gogma Ardian system is another endgame system, and I'm not a big fan of it. But basically, if you've played with the Ardian weapon system where you were rolling weapons, it's just a progression of that. Now, when you upgrade to Gogmardian, your weapon gets 2 set bonuses, or a set bonus and a group bonus, and you can keep re-rolling those. It's always going to be RNG. You can't really like, oh, I got one that I want, I'm going to lock that in and roll the other one. Can't do that. It just re-rolls constantly. But you can choose to keep the one that you have or to get the new one. So, you know, you can basically re-roll your weapon until your heart's content, until you get like a specific set of group set bonus and regular set bonus. But naturally, because of RNG, the chance of getting exactly the combination that you want is going to be very challenging. On top of that, you used to get the Ardian weapons with like attack, affinity, all of these things. And, you know, they were all, let's say they were all level 1. Now you can vary between level 2, 3, and EX. So basically, you can also re-roll Ardians, you know, the existing stats on an Ardian weapon. You can constantly re-roll that to get better and stronger. But again, it is very RNG. So it's going to be one hell of a grind, and it involves using Gogmazios materials, but you can also meld materials to get auric calcite. And by the way, the auric calcite conversion has been significantly increased, so you can get a lot more auric calcite than you were able to get by just melding regular monster materials. So that's good. And yeah, those are like the 3 big endgame systems that you're interacting with. Talisman grind, Gogmardian weapons, and Transcendence for armors, which is really cool. It's, even though I'm not a big fan of like all of the RNG and stuff, I still find myself hunting a bunch of monsters to try and squeeze out a little bit more damage out of my weapons, but personally I would have preferred that they've added more upgrades to the actual weapon tree, because at this point in time, Gogmardian weapons completely make the weapon tree obsolete. Until Master Rank comes around, Gogmardian weapons are just the best for everything. I think that I'm 90% sure that this is the case for every single weapon, just because of the nature of how the upgrading of Gogmardian weapons works. But, you know, whether or not is it worth it to return to Monster Hunter Wilds, personally, I still have a lot of fun with Monster Hunter Wilds. I'm going to continue playing through it, at least until Stories 3 comes around. Then I'm going to be playing the crap out of Stories 3. Then I'm going to be returning to Wilds for the eventual expansion, or if they decide to add a little bit more content to it. But Wilds still tremendously fun, and if you have not played the game since base game because of like lack of challenge, or you wanted a more meaningful end game, I think that a lot of those things have been addressed. I think the game is in a really good state. I would actually say it's one of the better base games of Monster Hunter. But, you know, your mileage may vary depending on like whether or not your system can run it properly because of the performance situation and the driver situation. But hopefully this video helps you make a decision as to whether or not you want to jump back into Wilds. I think it's in a really good state, but you guys let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about it? I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.